Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Ross, the head of creator success at Seed&Spark. Welcome to the second episode of First Sparks, a casual conversation with established artists about their creative firsts. If you watched our first episode, we did it from my car because it was in the middle of the outages in Austin. So those are no longer persistent. I'm just dealing with the regular Texas falling apart, everyday things. So before we start, we'd like to acknowledge the land we are all on is occupied territory. Please check the YouTube live comments feed for a link to a First Nations COVID relief fund and an amazing app that will tell you exactly whose land you are currently watching from, or in the video description if you're watching this as a VOD. I am coming to you from the land originally belonging to Jamanos, Tonkawa, Coahuiltecan, and Comanche. Our guest today on First Sparks is Karyn Kusama, a writer and director known for her work on Girl Fight, Jennifer's Body, The Invitation, and many more. Her first film, Girl Fight, won the Director's Prize and shared the Grand Jury Prize at the 2000 Sundance Film Festival. She also directs television and is known for shows like AMC's *Halt and Catch Fire* and Showtime's *Billions*. Her last feature, Destroyer, starring Nicole Kidman, was released by Annapurna Pictures in 2019, and she'll also be directing a new Dracula film for Blumhouse Productions, which was announced last year, and we're all really excited about that. Sounds amazing. So let's bring Karyn on. Hi, Karyn.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on. We
Sure.
appreciate you're taking the time. So
Sure.
Everyone knows that all the films and the TV shows you've directed over the years. Jennifer's Body, a cult classic, but we're gonna go way back to before all those films, before everyone knew who you were, and talk about what was the first project you directed or script you wrote.
The first script that I wrote that actually became a film was a short film called Sleeping Beauties. I made it in school. It was like my junior narrative thesis film, and I think it was about 15 minutes long. And it was a kind of almost like a fairy tale between two sisters who had the ability to conjure and create their sort of ideal fantasy man. But in conjuring him together, he only chooses one of them. And it's sort of about the rupture in a relationship between two women or two young women when sex gets in the way, basically.
That's sounding so similar to Jennifer's Body now that you describe it. I know that was like way before that, but that's really interesting because you have a lot of films in your catalog that have these strong female protagonists. And it's interesting that's been something that you've done ever since I'm assuming that was in college when you were making that film.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And was that all shot in New York where you went to
school? It was
school?
shot in New Jersey. We found this historical home to kind of create this sort of mysterious, almost like a modern take on two girls locked in a castle kind of vibe. And so though it's nonsensical, the girl who does decide to go down and like meet this man she's helped create. She has to like climb out the window and shimmy down the trellis. And, so it has a bit of that kind of fairy tale vibe. But it was a challenging experience. It was my first sync sound color film project.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. May I ask what town in New Jersey, if you remember? I'm from Jersey, so I'm just curious.
Was there a town called? It had a really strange name. And give me a second, and I might remember it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, it was a vivid name, so I hope it returns to me in the next half hour.
Yeah, it'd be so cool to see if that house was still there. For all these years. So what would you say is the most difficult part of that project? Was there like a first big mistake you maybe made on the project, or maybe in your career around that time when you were a student or shortly after?
It's interesting that you call it a mistake, because to me, I try to look at challenging experiences as less in the framework of mistakes and more in the
Mhm.
frameworks of learning opportunities. And
I like that. That's like most improved.
yeah, exactly.
Karyn.
And so one thing that that could not have dawned on me, but
Mhm.
I learned my lesson and apply it even now,
Mhm.
is that I might get sick in the process of making the movie, but still have to work. And
Mhm.
so I literally had, for 2 of the days that we were shooting, a very memorable case of stomach flu.
Oh my gosh.
And so I remember there was a bathroom in the basement of this house that was like open to crew.
Mhm.
And I was so sick, I had basically just taken, so gross, taken a bathrobe to put it
Mhm.
around me because I was like feverish, chills,
Oh
all
my
of these
gosh.
things that today in the world of where we now are facing a global pandemic, and in the world of production, you cannot come to set sick.
Yeah.
But I did, and I was the director, and there was sort of in my mind no other option.
Yeah.
So I had to direct the actors and then run down to this basement in my crazy robe get up, which maybe just made me feel like homier and comfy
Yeah.
and safe, even though I looked absurd. I would run down, literally like have a puking session, and then, sort of wipe the sweat from my brow and go back up like, okay, ready to get back to work. And the notion that like we bring our physical selves to the job, um, it was something I had to learn the hard way. And
Mhm.
from that moment, I've always made a real point when I'm shooting, um, to really take care of myself,
Mhm.
because you just don't want to feel so compromised on set.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
definitely did. And so it was just kind of, having to learn in a very difficult sort of first time way that the show must go on in
Yeah.
that case. And we didn't
Yeah.
have insurance days, and we didn't have the ability to
Mhm.
not have me there. So
Yeah.
that, that
That's
was a
I
learning
mean,
experience.
that's a lot to deal with on your very first film. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm sure there's directors that are go on projects and have not ever even experienced that, like running to the bathroom in between takes. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you thought like, well, this is probably the worst case scenario. It has to
Yes.
get better from here.
Yeah. Definitely
That's
it helped to experience worst case first.
yeah. Yeah, and then also being on set, the first couple times you're on set dealing with a 12 to 14-hour day,
Mhm.
typically, like that's taxing on on your body. And directors don't really have breaks. Like they're watching over every scene. They don't get, the breaks that maybe an actor who's not in the scene gets. So
Yeah.
that's a huge lesson of, your body and your health has to come first, especially when you're so crucial to every day of production.
Totally. Yeah, the notion of just physical stamina.
Mhm.
I learned really early how important it is to kind of be mindful of how much I would be asked to show up and be
Mhm.
totally present, um, every day.
Mhm. And that's something you also establish for your crew, when with expectations of like, if you're sick, like presently, like you can't be on set.
Yeah,
It's such a risk factor now, and I think it's
yeah,
people are more aware of it now that there's something that actually is like trackable for if people, temperature checks every time you
totally,
step on set.
totally.
Um,
Yeah.
mhm. So I know you went to school, you went to NYU to pursue film. Can you talk more about your experience there, learning your craft? Were you specifically studying to be a writer director, or did you figure out like that's what you wanted to do when you were in the program?
I went to film school pretty focused on directing right away.
Hmm.
And writing for me is something I've done. I might continue to do. I find it
Hmm.
really difficult. It doesn't come easily to me,
Hmm.
though I see the benefit of generating one's own material. It's definitely something I've been slow to always do. Like I wrote my first feature, I've written shorts, but I don't necessarily write I definitely don't write everything I direct. And so I went into it really focused on directing in film school. And I think this idea of learning one's craft, it's sort of a multi-pronged approach or experience in my case, where I feel like I learn my own craft by learning the craft of others, like by really paying attention to the filmmaking of movies that deeply affect me or that I love. I go back to them to sort of see how they work and kind of figure out, kind of deconstruct how craft affects one's emotional kind of visceral reaction to a story on screen. And then film to film and show to show, I feel like I learn new things about the different ways that craft can express itself in storytelling. And so luckily for me, I feel like I'm always a student of it. Like I'm always learning, you know?
That's refreshing to hear. You know, I didn't go to film school either. So it's like, I learn from others when I get on set and shadowing and then also like consuming stuff. Do you find yourself when you watch TV shows and films, whether it was back when you were a student or even today, dissecting things and kind of looking at it from a lens as a director, or are you able to also enjoy watching shows and films without
I mean, I think that's interesting. I mean, I think that for me, the most effective films and television are the ones where you don't see the craft or feel it right away. You don't understand there's an invisible quality to it. And so for that reason, I probably am more drawn to, I want to say slightly subtler kind of stories at this point. And the bigger, more spectacle oriented movies, the spectacle has to be really good if I'm gonna sign up for sort of engaging with it, because oftentimes I think the spectacle overtakes the emotional experience. So for me, it's kind of like if I'm really moved by something, I feel something from it, then I go back to it because I'm like, okay, what did that film or what did that show do on a technical level to get me closer to that emotional state? And I often find that the answers are can be very subtle, you know, about sound design, about how one uses the camera, how one withholds information, how one explores a character, you know, visually and sonically. So I like to return to things I love to look at the craft more specifically.
That's really interesting. I feel like when I get pulled in by a film or a show that makes me, it's like the uncomfortable meter. I just made that up now because like Jennifer's Body, I was rewatching the other day, and I have to remind myself this is a film because like when the acting and the presentation is so realistic, and you're like, oh, I have so much anxiety for this character, and then I'm like, it's not a real person. Like I have to take a step back, and I'm like, this isn't really happening. Like, but it's just so convincing. So I can see how you're like, you don't notice, you don't realize, you're not looking for like kind of the technical thing. You kind of get lost in the story and the storytelling when it's good. Yeah. So what's a recent first you had? And it doesn't have to be related to filmmaking. I know a lot of people are picking up quarantine hobbies.
Yes, that's really funny. I mean, a lot of my non-quarantine hobbies ended up applying perfectly well to quarantine, largely around cooking. So that was fantastic. But in terms of a first that is not film related, I recently took a vacation like up the coast of California, and I haven't actually done much exploration of California as a state. And it's like, you know, incredible, incredible vistas, incredible landscapes. So much is in this magical state. And we happened to be next to an oyster farm. And I started just having like oysters that I shucked myself for breakfast.
Wow.
because I was just like, when else am I going to get to like shuck my own oysters?
Yeah.
For one, I learned how to shuck oysters and became, I want to say, fairly good at it. I don't necessarily think I'm looking to like be hired by
Career
the most
change.
Tony French restaurant, but I got kind of good at it and fast at it and like knew how to like sort of preserve the shape of the oyster, which is the goal.
Mhm.
And I started eating them for breakfast, which kind of felt like breakfast of champions to me.
Yeah.
So that's
I
a
love
first.
that. That's the best quarantine breakfast I've heard of. I know people are like, I'm going to wake up and eat a slice of cake because we're in a pandemic, but I think
Right.
a bowl of oysters is next level. I love that.
Yeah. That's funny.
What would your advice be for someone who's making their first project, whether they're directing, maybe their first short or even first feature, or even trying to write their first script? What would your advice, the best advice you'd give?
I mean, I like to say that the advice I would give to a person who's doing it for the first time is similar to the advice I give myself now when I'm doing the same thing with more experience behind me.
Mhm.
I think it's really important to be as present with the work you're doing, be as open with the work you're doing, to the discomfort, to the struggle, to the sense of impending failure. Like that it's really important to just be kind of alive to the process. And so I guess like what I would say, particularly in today's age, where I find the notion of what creation must look like for younger people very daunting,
Mhm.
because there's so many ways to distract oneself from the task at hand.
Mhm.
And so like I guess my hang on one second. Can we
Mhm.
close that? Um, sorry, I have a leaf blower in the background and it's awfully loud. So loud. Sorry.
Well, I'm not hearing from this end,
Oh,
so
you're not. Oh, okay.
yeah,
That's really great.
not as loud as you, at
Okay.
least.
Okay, great. I'm very happy to hear that. Um, but I guess I just feel like if you can, it's simple stuff, but like put your phone in another room. Like,
Mhm.
um, try to figure out what are the things that pull me away from the flow of the work I'm trying to do. I know for
Mhm.
myself, it is definitely my phone.
Mhm.
And I see it as a valuable tool, and God knows we all use them all the time. But in the
Mhm.
end, I really seriously question their value on any kind of creative level.
Yeah.
And so like to me, I like nothing on set makes me more depressed than looking at a cast and crew that's all on their phone. I'm
Yeah.
just like, nope, can't happen. I cannot see your phone. Like, because
Yeah.
something in my brain dies and then I think about everything in your brains that are dying. And
Yeah.
so I feel like it's important to sort of create a space that honors the opportunity to have some inspiration, even
Mhm.
if it doesn't always visit you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But like
Yeah.
have that hope that
Yeah.
maybe by staring out the window for 5 minutes, a good idea might come. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
so I'm all about like figuring out quiet, um, concentrated time. And
Mhm.
and so for every person who's making something, are they getting that time, and are they able to really experience the experience of
Mhm.
what they're doing, whether it's sitting alone and writing, whether it's being on set with a cast and crew, whether
Mhm.
it's being an actor who's listening to a director or in a scene. Are you feeling like you're in your own body as you're having this experience? I guess that's
Mhm.
my number one thing, is like figuring out how to like drop into our bodies.
Yeah. That's amazing advice, and like I'm gonna need to print that out and put it on like a pillow or something, or like printed
It'd be
all
a
over
really
my
weird
house.
pillow. I'm
Just
sure it would bring
yeah,
up a lot of questions.
yeah. Just I'll print out the entire transcript of this conversation. But my boyfriend's probably laughing in the other room because like that's a big issue for me. Like as a creator, it's like I'm so easily distracted,
Yep.
especially when you're kind of dealing with different mediums that you're working in or have multiple projects at once.
Yes.
But I think that's a huge tip for especially young filmmakers because there is that instinct as soon as you're done with the scene, or if there's a break, to like immediately pull out your phone. And unless you're lucky to be in a place with no service,
Yeah.
where like some obscure places, maybe that house in New Jersey, it is such a quick thing to do. And how nice would it be if you just took that moment to like interact with the crew or think through that scene, like the moments from that scene that you just shot, and
Yeah.
appreciate it. Because I think, especially given everything, with I know some people are returning back to set, but a lot of indie filmmakers had to go stay indoors and kind of wait until it was safe. And so, like, I feel like I'm so much more excited to return to set, and I want to appreciate that time. So I think that advice would be like huge. And I was telling Shay how much I appreciate that you're not on social media and you don't have a website. I'm like, I want to be like Karyn's level of offline because I'm like too online. Like,
Right. Right. I mean,
but
I guess, it's really funny. I saw this window for myself where I could be like a lot of my peers and colleagues who handle it just better than I think I could,
mhm,
who are able to be on social media and not find it sort of vaguely a kind of ambient dread around it. But that's
mhm,
how I experience it, even on my friends' behalf. When I see
mhm,
them in like a Twitter war, I'm just like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm not in your shoes right now. Or I'm so
yeah,
glad I'm not letting, it's hard enough for me to deal with the voices in my own head, let
mhm,
alone other voices um,
yeah,
that I would have to make more room for. So yeah, I'm quite hardline about that kind of stuff for myself, for my own mental
yeah.
health.
I aspire to that. I definitely think that is good for creators and filmmakers. Good advice to kind of separate yourself from as much as you can, especially when you're in the middle of shooting or directing something for the first time. But
Oh yeah,
Karyn,
yeah.
thank you so much for all of your wisdom and advice and sharing those very early days of filmmaking. We're so excited to see what's next from you. The Dracula remake sounds really exciting,
Thank you.
and I'm sure. Well, so I was going to say you can't find anything online. You don't have to. You can't follow Karyn, but I recommend everyone go on streaming platforms and look up all of her films and shows that she's directed, to really understand the art that she's been making during her career. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, everyone watching at home. Now, once you're done with this, go offline, throw your phone away, and until future episodes of First Sparks on Instagram Live. Unfortunately, that is on your phone. So our next one is at the end of the month, Wednesday, April 28th, with Crazy Ex-Girlfriends co-creator and star Rachel Bloom. But
Oh,
thank you
she's so
again.
great. That's so awesome. You're
Yeah,
gonna talk to Rachel. She's awesome.
yeah, we had an amazing packed month between you and Rachel. We're so excited. I'm like, I realize I keep booking female creators. I'm like, I forget that there's other genders out there to book, but we're excited to have both of you share your experiences with our community of filmmakers. So thank you again, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. This was really a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.